The morning was cold, dark, and silent. Most people were still sleeping, but David Goggins was already awake. His alarm had not even rung yet. He didn't need it anymore. Pain had become his alarm. Discipline had become his habit. As he tied his old running shoes, his mind went back to the man he used to be, the weak, tired, and overweight version of himself. The boy who had been bullied, the man who had failed many times, and the person who once gave up on life. But now, he had a new rule. No excuses, no breaks, no comfort. He stepped outside. The air was freezing, and his breath turned into mist. The road ahead was long and empty, just like his past. But this time he was not running away from pain. He was running toward it, because he knew that's where growth lived. Each step hit the ground with a message: stay hard, get back to work. His body screamed for rest, but his mind whispered louder: don't stop now. The memories of his old life tried to pull him back. The times he failed tests, the nights he cried alone, the days he looked in the mirror and hated what he saw. But that man was gone, buried under miles of running, hours of push-ups, and rivers of sweat. Now David was chasing something different. Not medals, not fame, but respect for himself. Halfway through the run, his legs began to shake. The pain was sharp, real, and almost unbearable. Most people would have stopped, but Goggins smiled. Good, he said quietly to himself. That means I'm alive. He remembered the voices of people who told him he couldn't do it. The teachers, the bullies, even his own mind. All of them had tried to break him. But pain became his teacher. Failure became his friend. When he finally stopped running, the sun was rising. His shirt was soaked, his legs burning, and his heart beating fast. But inside he felt peace. Not because it was easy, but because he did what others wouldn't. He looked at the road, smiled again, and whispered, "This is just the beginning. Get back to work." And with that, he started running again. Faster, harder, stronger. Because David Goggins was no longer chasing comfort. He was chasing greatness. The sound of the ocean was loud, and the cold wind cut through his skin like knives. David Goggins stood in front of the Navy SEAL training base, a place where dreams died and warriors were made. He looked around. Men stronger and faster than him stood beside him, shivering in their wet clothes. Everyone looked tough. But David knew toughness wasn't about muscles. It was about the mind. The instructor shouted, "Welcome to Hell Week!" Everyone screamed back, but David stayed silent. He had learned one thing: talk less, work more. Hours later, the pain began. Running through freezing water, carrying heavy logs, crawling in the mud. It felt endless. The body screamed for mercy. Some men quit, walking toward the bell that signaled surrender. Every time someone rang that bell, David felt a fire grow inside him. He told himself, "Not me, I've been through worse." His hands were bleeding, his feet full of blisters, but he refused to stop. Every second, his mind tried to trick him. "You can't do this, you're not strong enough." But he answered in silence, pushing harder. At midnight, the instructors made them lie down in the cold ocean. The water was freezing. David could feel his heartbeat slow. One trainee next to him whispered, "I can't take this anymore." A moment later, that man got up and rang the bell. David closed his eyes. He remembered his old life, the pain, the bullying, the failures, the people who laughed at him, the nights when he wanted to give up. He opened his eyes again. "Not this time," he whispered. He started laughing, not because it was funny, but because the pain no longer scared him. The instructors noticed and yelled, "Why are you smiling, Goggins?" David shouted back, "Because I'm not cold anymore, sir." Everyone looked at him like he was crazy. But that moment changed something inside him. He realized that pain could no longer control him. He controlled it. When morning came, only a few men were left. David's body was broken, but his spirit was stronger than ever. He had found his secret weapon, his mind. He looked at the rising sun, his lips trembling but smiling. "People quit because they forget why they started," he whispered. "I remember. He stood up again, ready for another day in hell. Because for David Goggins, there was no finish line. There was only one rule: get back to work. The training was over. David Goggins had survived what most men could not. He was now a Navy SEAL, something once impossible for the boy who used to hide from life. But deep inside, he knew one truth: the real battle had just begun. One evening, after completing a mission, David looked at his reflection in the mirror. He saw a strong soldier, but not a satisfied man. His eyes were still searching for something more. He whispered to himself, "You're not done yet. Don't ever be done." Years of hard training had made his body powerful, but his heart wanted a bigger test, something beyond limits. That's when he heard about ultramarathons and races longer than 100 miles. Races that broke even the strongest athletes. Everyone said, "Goggins, you can't do that. Your body's not built for it." David smiled. "Good," he said. "That means it's time to try." He started training alone. Long runs under the burning sun, lifting weights till his arms shook and pushing his body beyond exhaustion. Every step hurt. Every mile felt impossible. But he didn't care. He wasn't chasing medals or fame. He was chasing the man he could become. One morning, during a 100-mile race, his legs gave out at mile 70. He fell to the ground, bleeding, tired, and almost broken. The crowd looked at him with pity. Some shouted, "Stop! You've done enough!" But David Goggins didn't hear them. He heard his old self whispering, "You'll never make it." He clenched his fists and said, "Not this time." He stood up slowly. Every step felt like knives cutting through his legs, but he moved. 1 mile, then another, then another. The pain was no longer his enemy. It was his fuel. At mile 90, his vision blurred, his body trembled, but his mind kept shouting, "Get back to work." When he finally crossed the finish line, he didn't celebrate. He didn't cheer. He just smiled quietly, because he had done something no one believed possible. He looked at his bloody shoes and whispered, "Pain unlocks power. If you quit, you'll never find it." That day, David realized that the limits people talk about are lies. The human body can do anything if the mind refuses to quit. And from that moment, his mission changed. He no longer wanted to inspire himself. He wanted to inspire the world. Because David Goggins wasn't just running anymore. He was showing humanity what is possible when you never give up. David Goggins had become something rare, a man who refused to quit no matter the pain. But after that 100-mile race, something new began to grow inside him. He started asking himself, what if I could help others find this strength too? He remembered the boy he once was, scared, broken, lost. And he thought about how many people still lived that way every single day. People who were trapped by fear, excuses, and weakness. He decided to share his story. At first, he didn't know how. He wasn't a speaker. He wasn't famous. He was just a man who had suffered and survived. But he believed that pain had a purpose. So he began small. He spoke at schools, small gyms, and military camps. His voice was rough, honest, and full of truth. You don't need talent, he told them. You need heart. You need discipline. You need to stop feeling sorry for yourself and get back to work. People listened. Some cried. Others felt a fire rise inside them. His story spread like wildfire. Videos of his speeches went viral. People around the world started repeating his words. Stay hard. No excuses. But success didn't make his life easier. Fame brought pressure, expectations. People looked at him like a superhero. But David knew he was still human. Every morning, he still woke up before sunrise. He still trained alone. Still fought his inner voice. The voice that whispered, "You've done enough." One day, during a speech, he paused and looked at the crowd. Thousands of faces stared back at him. He said quietly, "People think I'm special, but I'm not. I'm just a man who refused to quit. You can do the same." The room fell silent. He told them about the dark nights, the failures, and the endless pain. But instead of hiding it, he showed how it made him stronger. Don't run from your pain, he said. Run with it. Let it shape you. That night after the event, he sat alone in his hotel room. The applause was gone. The lights were off. Only silence remained. He looked at his running shoes by the door and smiled. Fame didn't matter. Followers didn't matter. What mattered was the mission, to keep going, to stay hard, to work when no one was watching. He tied his shoes, stepped outside, and disappeared into the cold night, running once again. Because David Goggins never stopped. He only knew one rule: get back to work. The world now knew his name. David Goggins. The man who conquered pain, who ran through storms, who turned weakness into power. But behind that strong image, something dark was growing. His body was breaking down. Years of pushing beyond limits had left deep scars, broken bones, injured knees, and torn muscles. Even breathing started to hurt. One morning, as he tried to get out of bed, his legs refused to move. The pain shot through his spine like fire. For the first time in years, David couldn't stand. He sat there silent, looking at the floor. The voice inside his head spoke again, the same voice he had fought for years. Maybe it's time to stop. But another voice answered, calm and powerful. No, you're not done yet. He dragged himself to the mirror. His face looked tired, his eyes red, but there was still fire in them. He whispered, I've been here before. This is just another wall to break. Doctors told him to rest. They said he should stop running, stop training, was maybe forever. But David smiled. They don't know my mind, he said. Weeks passed. He couldn't train. The silence hurt more than the pain. He missed the sound of his feet hitting the road, the early morning air, the burn in his lungs. But instead of feeling sorry for himself, he went to war inside his own head. He started journaling, writing down every weakness, every fear, every excuse. He called it the accountability mirror. Every night he looked himself in the eye and asked, Did you give your best today? Sometimes the answer was no. But he didn't hide from it. He faced it. Day by day, he began rebuilding himself. Slowly, painfully, step by step. Push-ups on his knees, short walks, light runs. Every movement was a battle, but he fought through it. People around him said, Goggins, why don't you rest? You've already proved your point. He looked at them and said softly, David Going was back, not fully healed, not pain-free, but back on his mission. He no longer chased records or medals. Now his goal was simple, to show the world what the human mind can do. Every morning before the sun rose, he was already running. The roads were silent, but in his head there was a storm. The sound of discipline, pain, and purpose. He said to himself, people see the finished product, but they don't see the process. They don't see the lonely mornings, the broken bones, the tears. That's where the real growth happens. He began traveling across the world, speaking to soldiers, athletes, and students. But his message was always the same. Nobody is coming to save you. You have to save yourself. When he spoke, people felt something real. His words didn't come from books. They came from scars. He told them about his failures, his pain, and his demons. He told them how he used suffering as his weapon. Pain is not your enemy, he said in one speech. It's your training partner. It's the only thing that will make you stronger than yesterday. Crowds cheered. People cried. Some stood up ready to change their lives that very moment. But David never let success blind him. After every event, while others rested, he went back to his routine. Cold showers, hard runs, push-ups till his arms shook. Because he knew that comfort was the enemy. One night after finishing a long speech, a young man came to him. His voice was shaking as he said, Goggins, I want to be like you. David looked at him for a moment and said, No, you don't want to be like me. You want to be the best version of you. That's the real fight. Those words stayed with the boy forever, and they became the heart of Goggins' message to the world. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He wasn't chasing fame. He just wanted to prove that the mind, once trained, could defeat anything. Fear, pain, even the impossible. Late that night, he sat alone in a hotel room, watching the city lights outside his window. He thought about his journey, from a scared boy to a man who inspired millions. He smiled and whispered, "The mission's not over. The war is never done. Get back to work." And once again, before sleeping, he tied his shoes, ready for another run before dawn. Because David Goggins didn't live for comfort. He lived for the challenge. The sun was setting, painting the sky with fire and gold. David Goggins stood on a quiet road, the same kind of road where his journey had begun years ago. The world around him was silent, but inside his heart, there was a storm of memories. He had been through pain, failure, and darkness. He had run miles that broke his body. He had faced fear that could crush a soul. But now, looking back, he realized something powerful. None of it had defeated him. It had built him. He whispered to himself, every scar, every tear, every drop of sweat, it all had a reason. His phone buzzed. Hundreds of messages, thousands of people from around the world thanking him. Soldiers, students, mothers, fathers, all inspired by his words, his pain, his fight. But David didn't see himself as a hero. He was just a man who decided not to quit. He sat down on the ground, took a deep breath, and looked at the sky. He thought about the boy he used to be, scared, silent, and broken. Then he thought about the man he became, strong, loud, unbreakable. He smiled. That boy would never believe this, he said softly. Even now his body hurt. His knees were damaged, his back ached, and his heart carried a lifetime of battles. But that didn't matter, because his mission was never about comfort. It was about becoming the best version of himself. As night fell, he started to run again. Slowly at first, then faster. Each step was a message to the world. You can be tired. You can be hurt. You can be broken. But you don't stop. He remembered his most powerful truth. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline is what stays. The road stretched endlessly ahead, but that didn't scare him. It excited him. Because the road was life, full of pain, full of lessons, full of growth. He whispered, "People wait for the right time, but there is no right time. There's only now. So get up and get back to work." His breath was heavy, his heart strong. The wind hit his face, but his eyes were calm. He wasn't running from the world anymore, and he was running for it. Because somewhere out there, someone needed to hear his story. Someone needed to know that pain is not the end. It's the beginning. As the camera fades out, David's voice echoes in the distance. Don't stop when you're tired. Stop when you're done. Don't wait for motivation. Be your own hero. And no matter what happens, get back to work.